Hey, what is up, mortals? It is Sam Gabriel here, and welcome to What If Deku Could Manipulate Gravity, Part 1. Just wanted to greet you guys by just saying sit back and relax, you're in for a treat, so we begin. You losers will be lucky to end up as sidekicks to some busted D-lister. Ha! I'm going to the top. UA! The last year class of Aldera Junior High muttered to themselves at the statement made by a certain blonde. He had just claimed to make it in the most prestigious school in the country, and the thing was, Katsuki Bakugo could probably do it. Smart, strong, and overbearing. No one could stand against him. No one except... Kacchan, you're being rude! A crash could be heard as Bakugo fell butt first onto his seat, and the explosive blonde angrily turns to face his childhood best friend. Oh, what was that for? I was just telling the truth. Well, at least be nicer. I can't tell if I'm applying for UA because I want to be a hero or to stop you from being angry. Okay, never mind. That won't happen. Huh? What'd you say, Planetoid? The teacher sighed as he told Izuku Midoriya off for using his quirk in class. This was just the usual, though, as the two had been bickering since babies. Ever since the Greenette first discovered his quirk, gravity manipulation, that summer when he and Bakugo were kids, they had been in a competitive race. An incident happened when the children were 4, as Bakugo had climbed up a tree to try and free a ball they kicked up. The problem came when the young child ended up losing his grip and was about to slam onto the ground. Izuku had watched his friend fall in almost slow motion and out of desperation held out his hands. With a yell, the air around the blonde had distorted like a mirage in a desert, and that was when it happened. Bakugo found his descent slowing down as if he was on the moon. It gave him enough time to rotate and as a result landed safely. He was glad to have not received an injury, but was more excited about the appearance of a quirk. However, when he turned around, his friend was on the floor. Whether it was the hot summer air or the adrenaline rush from having to save his friend, Izuku had fainted the second the other landed. Do you really have to still call me Planetoid? The Greenette asked as he and Bakugo headed back. The nickname meant the developing or small planet, and it was meant as a childish insult. Well, if your dumbass didn't faint from using your quirk, I wouldn't have had to carry you back from the forest. It wasn't my fault I used my quirk when I was half unconscious. Whatever you say, Planetoid, just hurry and drink your water before you faint again. The two walked and argued as they headed home. They lived in the same neighborhood after all, and were inseparable for different reasons. Bakugo's reason was that Izuku's fainting habit from overusing his quirk secretly scared him. The blonde still remembered how the Greenette's body just crumpled to the floor, and it caused him to feel unsteady. It was just a heat stroke since the quirk depleted the child's water supply, and since it was a hot day, the fainting was nothing serious. But it was always better to be cautious. What's wrong with Planetoid? Did you think of a smarter one or what? Yours doesn't work since I don't plan to develop into a planet. I did a lot of research and I was looking into really big theories and... Suddenly, the manhole behind the two clattered to the floor, and Bakugo immediately whisked around. A giant sludge bubbled out in a sickly deep green mess with 2 bulging yellow eyes. The horrific sight then opened its mouth with a disgusting grin, causing the Greenette to freeze for a second. 2? Damn it. I'll just take one and kill the other. With no time to react, the sludge pounced on Bakugo. Its vicious body smothered the blonde while letting out a burst of maniacal laughter. It was a sickening sight as the villain twisted round and round. You have a great quirk, kid. Perfect for my new skin suit. Another explosion erupted from Bakugo's hands but was completely useless, except for prolonging his capture, but it was enough to snap Izuku out of his fear. Kacchan! Hands out in front of him, Izuku forced his internal temperature to rise. The palm of his hands flared up as Izuku concentrated on the air around the sludge. It was a large space, but the Greenette didn't care. He had to do it. Bakugo saw his determined friend concentrate and braced himself, knowing what was going to happen. The villain, thinking that the blonde had given up on resisting, relaxed too, but as he did, felt his usually light and viscous body turn to lead. Slamming to the ground, Bakugo grunted as the air itself weighed like a bunch of bricks. Lucky for him, a lifetime with Izuku had taught him how to get up from within the pressure, and as a result, managed to stand tall as the villain was pulled off his body. The sludge eventually pooled by his feet and was flattened onto the ground, but the younger one didn't stop using his quirk. Oh wait, Planetoid, stop! You're gonna... Kacchan, I'm fine! The short answer meant there was no room for negotiations, and the explosive one instead gritted his teeth and nodded. But before he could act, a huge figure jumped out of the manhole. The newcomer saw the situation and immediately reacted, grabbing the ridiculously heavy Bakugo. "Do not fear, for I am here!" All Might? It happened too fast for anyone to see. The Greenette let go of his quirk from the shock of seeing his idol, and the number one immediately pulled Bakugo out of the gravity-dense space. Then, with a punch downward, the villain was unconscious. Knowing his friend was safe had made Izuku wobble in relief, and Bakugo let out a small series of explosions from his palms. Seeing that the Greenette was just overwhelmed from seeing his hero, the ruby eyes rolled in gentle annoyance before the two glanced at each other. They had been caught up in the situation, but now... "Kacchan! It's All Might!" Izuku hissed loudly, and Bakugo nodded. Even if his face didn't show it, the blonde was beside himself with excitement. The Greenette was about to ask for an autograph when a thought occurred to him. The child froze a little and looked toward his friend, who became confused. "What?" "Kacchan, we're not supposed to use our quirks, remember?" "Crap, I forgot." They didn't have to worry, however, as All Might told them their actions were out of self-defense. They weren't going to get into trouble. The two sighed with relief, and Izuku happily asked for the autograph, which the hero readily gave. "All Might!" It was probably their only chance ever to speak to the number one hero, and Bakugo couldn't keep quiet. "We're aiming for UA first, and then I'm coming for your spot as number one." He outright declared his challenge to the top hero, and Izuku exasperatedly smiled. It is Kacchan, after all. All Might flashed his signature smile before giving a thumbs up. "You two were extremely brave, and even held your own against a villain. Keep training, and I'm sure you'll be great heroes." The two smiled widely at the praise as All Might got ready to leave. Just before he did, the number one faced the two boys. "There's a trash-filled beach isolated enough to train if you're interested. You can also help by cleaning the environment. Heroes don't just beat villains, after all. In fact, all heroes take care of social services before they make it big. Ask for a permit if you want to use your quirks, and I'm sure you can train a lot. Now, goodbye, young heroes!" Advice from the number one! Taking the words to heart, Izuku submitted permission permits for them both that night. What surprised both boys was that their documents received acceptance almost immediately. Don't they usually take a month? Either way, that was how the two boys changed their normal routine from training only on the weekends in the woods to cleaning Dagobah Municipal Beach every day. "What are you working on today, Kacchan?" The two sweaty boys dropped their school bags down with a huff. They had run all the way from school. "What I did last time, but intentional." The freckled boy tilted his head in confusion, and Bakugo grinned. The knuckles cracked, and with his palms wide open, sweat ignited, and the blonde went barreling up a pile of trash. "You can go airborne?" Izuku started a string of muttering on the potential of the quirk as his friend came back down to gently punch him on the shoulder. "Oi, do your own practice too." "Okay." As one blasted his way around the piles of trash, the other quickly chugged down a bottle of water. The dash from school had depleted his internal water levels a bit already, and it was a rather warm afternoon. Although if I was physically stronger in the first place, I wouldn't have had that problem. The sudden realization made Izuku look down at himself. His body wasn't thin, because he had spent most of his life in many battles against Bakugo, but it still wasn't enough. As such, the Greenette grinned as he knew what he had to do, before slowly exhaling and starting to move the junk by hand. Months passed, and each boy could see their training pay off. Bakugo could easily manipulate his way around the air now, as well as increase his output of the blast. Izuku found ways around problems by thinking outside the box, which drastically decreased his need to use his quirk. Before, if the Greenette needed to jump off a high pile of trash, he would control the gravity of his whole body and descend slowly. Decreasing gravity may be easier than increasing, but it was still hard to control a certain shape. Now he would just jump down and decrease gravity at the soles of his feet when he got near the ground. With less volume to decrease gravity, the more he could use it without feeling tired. The physical training also helped, as the water volume consumed each time decreased. The entrance exam was still a couple months away, and the beach had been cleaned. Bakugo now moved on to building body muscle, and it was Izuku's turn to use his quirk creatively. It wasn't a proper usage of his quirk, but at one point, the Greenette was bored and had an idea. Looking over to Bakugo, he held out a hand in the blonde's direction. Visualizing a sphere at the base of his friend's tank top, the freckled cheeks raised up into a cheeky grin as the hands clenched. "What the?" Izuku cackled as Bakugo was suddenly dragged to the floor mid-workout from his shirt being ridiculously heavy. "Oi, Planetoid, what was that for?" Izuku pretended he knew nothing of the sort before he registered what Bakugo said. "I already said stop calling me Planetoid, I already changed it." "What to?" "Gravitoid. Same thing." "No, it's not!" The two argued about the meaning behind the name before Bakugo shrugged the fight off. "Whatever, dumbass. Be whatever toid you want. I'm going back to training." Izuku gave an offended sniff before lying flat on the ground. In honest truth, he was a little stuck. Out of the two, he was the less creative one. I can't just make up ways to use my quirk. What am I expected to do? Become a Kacchan and flatten everyone in my way? Blinking at the random thought, the Greenette wondered if that would be possible. Increasing gravity is hardest as it takes up a lot more water, but standing up, Izuku glanced at the blonde who was taking laps around the beach, and an idea came to his mind. "Kacchan! What now, Planetoid?" "It's Gravitoid. Anyway, want to make your training harder?" The proposal of harder training caught the blonde's attention, and he smirked, malicious intent almost oozing from his face. "Bring it on!" He continued to run his laps, although he was now aware of Izuku's presence. The Greenette held his hands out before him. "There goes nothing." "Missed!" Bakugo easily dodged the large bubble of distorting air, and Izuku gritted his teeth with annoyance. "I can decrease that much gravity without the air changing, but I guess my limit is smaller with increasing." The blonde kept running and even threw in some high knees, as if to say Izuku's harder training was too easy. Okay, now he's done it. Even if Izuku was less creative than Bakugo, he filled the difference with his slightly higher ability to just adapt. Hands outstretched, the Greenette dramatically decreased the volume of space he increased gravity in, and Bakugo ran into the invisible spheres. The change caused the experiment's volunteer to stop mucking about and immediately take the run seriously. His balance, awareness, and reaction time were all tested, as he had to keep running despite feeling random weights on his body at random times. With a month left to go, Izuku grinned as he finally found a way to get the result he wanted, as Bakugo literally couldn't move from where he was in the sand. "I did it!" "Yes, you did! Now let go!" The Greenette stuck out his tongue playfully before relaxing his hands. The quirk's effect disappeared, and his childhood friend got up to stretch. "About time you did it! The entrance exam is next month!" Izuku just shrugged in somewhat of an apology before the two of them chatted about what they should do now. Since they both managed to get some breakthrough with their quirks and body, they decided to spend the last month resting. "You better be studying, idiot, or I'll smack it in like last time." Izuku winced at the phantom pain in his forehead before grinning. "I've been studying every day before bed. I'm not going to fail the written part, Kacchan." The blonde grinned, taking what Izuku said as a challenge as usual, and before they knew it, the month had blown over. "Oh my god, it's the vocal hero, Present Mike!" Izuku started to glow with happiness as he geeked out seeing the man. They had just finished the written part and now sat in a grand hall with many other kids. Everything was so new that the Greenette couldn't help but chatter hopelessly. Luckily for those around him, a blonde roughly nudged his side. "Ow! Oh, I was muttering again, wasn't I?" "Yeah, so shut the hell up!" They listened to the explanation, and both boys perked up once they heard it was a point-based test. After an Azurette asked about the 0 pointers, the two boys grinned when they found that they were placed on different grounds. "Hell yeah!" Bakugo smirked as he headed toward his designated block, and Izuku knew exactly what he meant. Whoever gets more points wins. Eyeing the bulking robots, Izuku grinned as he looked at his surroundings. Luckily for him, the terrain was almost made to show off the results of his quirk training, so the second the buzzer went off, the Greenette headed toward a building. Eraserhead stood in the staff room that oversaw the exam and glanced at the files in his hands before handing them to a skinny man. "Are these the first years you're interested in?" The principal of the school didn't turn around as he spoke, and the blonde man nodded. He had recently met with a potential third year but wanted to keep his options wide. "Yes. For junior high students, they essentially defeated a villain before he had the chance to lose me. Their hard-working personalities are even more evident when you see that they both almost hit full marks on the written exam. And now, They turned to the screen to watch a human grenade throw himself around. All robots in the vicinity were destroyed by the sheer power, and it wasn't as if the charge was barbaric. Rather, Bakugo's movements were refined and clean, only using the minimum force needed to complete the job before dashing off to the next target. Kid knows what he's doing. Not bad. Turning to another screen to observe the other, the results were less impressive as Izuku stood at the top of the building. The point count was still amazing nonetheless, but what took the teachers by surprise was his methods. Sitting at the edge of the roof, any robots that entered his range seemed to drop like flies. All the boy did was raise his hands and the machines crashed down. Smart kid. Nezu analyzed the situation with a slightly off-putting smile. I don't think it's a coincidence that he's up on that building. Aizawa looked closer and blinked. He was used to seeing students taking things for granted and not pushing themselves, but these two. From where he is, the kid overlooks the main intersection where robots pass. It was just unfortunate that the block Izuku was in had most of the potential UA students, and as a result, the robots would be defeated before they reached him. Bakugo, on the other hand, almost had the whole field to himself, and as a result, racked up points at lightning pace. Well, I think it's about time for this. Nezu's paw pressed a big red button, and immediately, tremors filled the area. Let's see how they'll react to our 0 pointers. As expected, the students reacted differently. Most ran off, ignoring everything and just trying to get to safety and to the teacher's interest. Both Bakugo didn't flee. The explosive blonde just changed his course of attack, taking advantage of the slow-moving machine to boost his score on the unoccupied robots that were worth something. As expected, with the way he was heading, the boy was going to finish first. Izuku hadn't moved from where he sat as she watched the arena trap bumble in his direction. Since the big one was heading in that direction, the analytical greenette knew the unoccupied robots would be on the other edge of the block, but before he could leave, a brunette caught his eye. She's gonna die. He wasn't wrong. The girl was injured and froze like a deer before headlamps. I know the school would stop it just before it reaches her, and I still need to get points. I miscalculated the strong people here. I really should just focus on the task, but... Izuku sighed. In the end, he would feel guilty even if he knew she was perfectly fine, and as a result, he stood up and jumped. What is he doing? The teachers watched as the forest-haired child jumped off a roof without hesitation and sighed as he suddenly seemed to fall a lot slower. Aizawa looked at the kid's quirk and nodded. Gravity manipulation, a mutated combination of his parents' quirks where the holder burned his water supply to freely increase or decrease gravity. As he descended down, Izuku rotated his body so he could kick off the wall and slowly floated down toward the robot. He really did move like an astronaut moving toward his aircraft. Now where is it? There were 2 ways to get points. One was to destroy the robot, and the other was to turn it off by a switch. That way those who specialized in stealth had a chance to pass. The switch was on its back, and the greenette loosened his grip slightly. Falling a little faster, the freckled face grinned as he positioned himself and... Increase! The robot shut down. Phew, that was easier than I... Before he could congratulate himself, the girl he had gone out of his way to save threw rainbows and sparkles to the floor. Oh God, are you okay? Scrunching his nose a little at the smell of puke, Izuku smiled politely as he released his grip of the gravity on his feet and landed next to the brunette. Good, just... Another hurl of rainbows hit the floor, and Izuku just sighed before rubbing her back. Aizawa watched as the kid forgot about getting more points and instead carried the girl toward the entrance where Recovery Girl was. Hero points weren't mentioned during the briefing, but with his actions, Izuku had gone from being higher than average to one of the best. So good, in fact, that when the buzzer went off, the greenette had placed second. With 56 villain points and 20 hero, the total of 76 made him literally a single point off joint first. So, these are UA's next generation. I can only hope the system puts them both in 1B. I don't want to deal with either of those two. The tired 1A teacher just sighed before joining the others. It was now time to record those hologram messages for those who passed, and he had always found them a pain. Why does UA even give messages that way? It's so inefficient recording them. But then again, the school was ruled by a questionable rat-bear-dog-looking creature with an IQ he couldn't understand, so he just shook his head. There was just no end to the troubles. Literally. Because when the summer passed and Aizawa laid on the ground before the open 1A homeroom door, The first thing he saw was a small crowd. It was the usual, of course, but this particular collection of students were around the very two kids he didn't want to see. Your old school put a stick up your ass, or were you born with it? Katchen, that's not nice. I still haven't thanked you for— Oh, shut it, Planetoid! It's Gravitoid! Just take the name, dipshit! That's not how it works, dumbass! He watched as the one with broccoli for hair argued while sitting right behind the living bomb. Aren't the students supposed to have their strength spread equally through the two classes? Why are the top 4 of the exam literally all in this class? Izuku went into a deep muttering about the theory of gravity and quantum physics, and the teacher sighed. Welcome to UA's hero course. No one heard the man as he drank a nutrient pack. It annoyed him since his appearance wasn't exactly someone to ignore. After all, he was in a bright yellow cocoon of a sleeping bag. Getting up, he trudged wearily inside holding a bundle of gym kits. Hello, I am Shota Aizawa, your teacher. Wear these and maybe outside we're having a fitness exam. Most of the class gasped as the two loudest finally quietened and turns to face him. The brunette protested about timing, but the hero didn't care. Instead, he glanced at the two troublemakers, but surprisingly, they both got up to get ready to leave. I guess they aren't so— First one changed and ready? I'm not losing this time. Eat my dust, Planetoid! It's Gravitoid! This is going to be a long year. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below here in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.